all right? I'm going to call this the cone of trust. What you're looking at here is a burn-up chart that this actually comes out of the Intuit burn-up tool, and you are looking at some period of time across here, multiple sprints, right? This is not a burn down, this is a burn up. So multiple sprints go across here. This big red line is the deadline of this thing that we're trying to hit. These dashed lines are release points. So we've decided this is release train departure dates. This line here is the scope that they're trying to deliver in story points, and it's increasing over time, as you can see. This is the story points that they actually delivered through this period of time. And then what we're doing is we're projecting out the fastest velocity based on their trend, the slowest velocity based on their trend. All right? And the reason it's called a cone of trust is because when we say when are we going to be done, we are done sometime between the fastest velocity projection when it crosses the line and the slowest, right? So sometime between here and here. All right? Now, imagine that we're out of control, right? Our velocity goes up to 100, and then it drops down to 3, and then it goes up to 78, and then it drops down to 9, right? If you've got a velocity gap like that, a seesaw effect, if you like, of, we tried to do too much, and then it all carried over, and then we got it in the next sprint, you end up with a fastest velocity line that goes up very steeply, and a slowest velocity line that goes out very shallow, and when are you going to be done could be sometime between 9 a.m. and 2 months from now. All right? Now, if you go into your boss's office with a burn-up, and by the way, when I worked at Gap, we would not go into a meeting with our general manager without one of these, right? That was the level of conversation we would have. If you go into their office and you say, we're going to be done sometime between 9 a.m. tomorrow morning and 4 months from now, you're going to get one of two choices, right? One is, 9 a.m. tomorrow morning sounds fine with me. Go do that. Probably ain't going to happen. Or get out of my office. I don't trust you. All right? Hence this name of cone of trust. Now, in order to address this cone of trust, we're building trust with our leaders here so that when we say we're going to miss the deadline, they trust us, right? And we know that we can't do it. We know we can't deliver with the resources that we have, with the scope that we have. They believe us, right? They're only going to believe us if this cone is narrow. And in order for this cone to be narrow, we need the velocities to be somewhat stable. In order to drive consistency in our velocities, we are going to have to drive consistency in our cycle times, right? So there's a constant loop of driving in consistency, driving out inconsistency, and let that flow through to your velocities, into your burn-up charts, and you have these awesome conversations with your management now to say, hey, we're on track, trust us. We're not on track, trust us. Here's what we're going to do about it. All right? So we start with those high-quality invest stories. We're going to provide high-quality estimates as a result of these high-quality stories. And again, it's just an estimate. It's not guaranteed. I'm not asking you how many hours is it going to take. I'm asking you which T-shirt size it is, right? So don't overthink it. But we're generally right. And from that, we're going to introduce and implement our checklist to reduce those delays. We're not going to put something into in progress that we know is going to get blocked, right? We're not going to allow our defects to escape, because when they do, guess what happens? Defect comes back. We have to work on it. We don't get points for that, so then that impacts our velocity, which drives instability in our velocity. Right? So we're going to reduce our defect escapes with checklists. We're going to get these teams starting to work together to expand the mindset. Now, the real magic here is that we are in it together now. Right? It's not about me and my dev tasks and, well, I'm done with all my dev tasks for the sprint. I'm going to start working on the stories for next sprint. Meanwhile, the poor QA is sitting there going, oh, I'm never going to get this done before the end of the sprint. Well, guess what? If the QA is not done, then nobody's done, right? And so we really want to use this concept of the flight crews to drive the team into value delivery mode together, right? We're in it together. Now, through this, we're going to get these consistent cycle times and these consistent velocities. And with that, we're going to narrow this cone of trust, and we're driving this predictability and sustainable pace. Because now, because I'm having a sensible conversation with leadership about we can't make it, right? I don't get this like, well, they might be able to make it, so why don't we just work the weekend and work the nights, and then you're back into the opposite effect, where you're getting into a seesaw effect. Yeah, we worked the weekend and we got a higher velocity, and then it dropped down again because we're all exhausted and we want to quit, and Joe did quit, right? And so, we really want to drive towards the sustainable pace here. And this is all kind of looped into this mindset. All right, now once you've done that, congratulations. You're building trust with your leaders through high quality, sustainable, predictable team performance. Throw that one in there for your gamers in the room. And for those of you who don't know, it's a Fallout character. And that's it, right? So this is what flight crews are all about. Good? All right, now, thank you. So if you want to contact me, you can contact me on LinkedIn. You can email me directly. Go check out our Fire Ant and our Agile maturity tool and some other things on our website. But other than that, I'll leave that up there for a second. We're going to do questions and, okay. All right, questions. Yes?
Yeah, so I have actually two questions.
Yeah.
The first one is, how Agile flight crews work with sustainability support projects while the whole team also has to triage defects that come more support requests come from the field? That's question number one. And second, the cycle time is only when the story is in progress. When the story is in progress, I may be doing the flight planning for other stories, and that can delay or increase the cycle time of the story. How do we measure that and prevent flight planning to affect the cycle time of an in-progress story?
Okay. Good questions. All right, so let's start with the first one. I'm going to paraphrase what I think I heard here. How do you deal with flight crews when the whole team is triaging support issues? Is that what I heard?
That's part of their daily.
All right. Okay. So there's some level of, let's call it run the business or BAU business as usual work that the team is working on. Now, if that's just a common level of noise, right? So every day we spend the first hour of the day working on triage, right? Then it's a wash, right? The cycle times of every story will get sort of 1 hour added to them sort of thing. It doesn't really matter. If it flexes up and down, right, the triage is going up and down, I guess I'd need to understand a little bit better of what, like the whole team, why the whole team does that, or whether you rotate around, or you divvy them up and say we've got 10 new tickets here, we're going to take one each. There's different ways you could tackle that, but again, it could end up being a wash, right? It's not that that one person is affected more than the other one. Everybody's affected. Every story is affected at some constant level of noise, depending on how we divided it up. So it might not matter. Right? It might not matter. It's going to be there. It might, you might see some inconsistency. You might see some outliers as a result of, a tricky triaging thing that you had to delve into. But all this is going to do is surface that, right? It's going to surface that in your cycle time chart, and then you can have a conversation about it, right? Well, what do we want to do about that? Does it matter? Maybe it doesn't matter. Does it impact our cone of trust? Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. This is not going to magically solve the problem. All it's going to do is help you surface the problem and have a conversation about it. Maybe you need a separate triage team. Maybe that's not going to work for you. Maybe you allocate one person who's never on a flight crew, is always on standby to work support tickets, and therefore it doesn't get counted. There's lots of different ways that you could approach it. So I don't know if any of that helps, but these things are always a little bit tricky, right? It depends on. Yeah. Well, all of them, right? So Intuit has hundreds of teams. They use a lot of different techniques. Some of them have support separate teams. Some of them divvy up the work. Some of them rotate people around. All those things that I just described. It really depends on their situation and what they need. And again, it's more about understanding the situation and then talking about the options for what you could do. All right. Second question was. Oh, right. So we're working on the flight crew. We're heads down. One of the things that we're focusing on at the moment right now is this idea of developer productivity, right? We want people working on stuff. We want them working on the flights, not being distracted with other things. And I think what you're describing is flight planning. When I use that term here, I'm talking about story writing. All right. Now, story writing can happen in different mechanisms in Agile, right? So, for example. we want most of our story writing to happen during an inception phase or release planning phase. And during that release planning phase, that's where we're engaging the entire team on that activity, right? So it's not constant noise distracting the team. But we might call that quarterly planning, for example. So we would gather the team or teams together. We do a quarterly planning where we write all the stories and decompose as many as we can, as many as are practical. And then we move the team into a sprint-by-sprint delivery mode. Now, during the sprints, things are going to change. Agile principle 2, welcome changing requirements. We're okay with that. New stories are going to come in. So during a sprint, we have a what we call backlog grooming session. Backlog grooming is where we are going to write the stories for the next sprint. It's typically starting with the owners of the team, the product owner, the technical owner, the design owner, and our teams would look like that. At some point, the team is going to have to be brought in to be engaged, right? Because they're going to have to provide the estimates for those new stories. Now, this is not a lot of noise because we did a lot of that in inception and release planning. But what we do in most teams is we have backlog grooming where the stories are written by the product owners and not engaging all of the flight crews at that point. And then they pull the trigger on a requirements estimation session, which is like a mini release planning, which is, I think, what you're talking about, where we get the teams in a room and they do, I think your typical one of those, depending on the level of noise, is 30 minutes to an hour per sprint on a set day, right? So they always kind of pull the trigger on that. Now, yes, the stories that are in progress during that 1 hour will get 1 hour of extra cycle time. But again, we're talking about an hour in a multi-day thing, right? So don't think you're going to get some sort of magical, super accurate, cycle time stability. There's always this noise here. Teams go to lunch. Teams go to an all-hands meeting. Teams, there's always that stuff that's going to happen. And the way that we think of the incremental story writing, if you like, is just another element of that noise.
I ask this because for us, the story planning and the story huddle,
Yeah.
They tend to vary a lot.
Yeah.
Because we need the teams to go into technical detail sometimes to get a better sense of our requirements.
Yeah.
So that time, that can impact our consistency on the cycle time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the other thing I'd sort of point you back to is that idea of the minimum responsible amount of work, right? If you don't need to go to the level of technical detail right now, right, just when we write a story, we're only interested in getting it into the bucket, right? Is it a small? Is it a medium? Is it a large? Now, if we don't know, right, then we need to have more of a conversation. But once I know enough to put it in a bucket to a reasonable level of confidence, that's it, you're done. Right? Don't worry about it, because later on, when you do the story how to adjust the flight crew, you'll go to the technical detail and you'll have that extra time investment, but that's now much more focused time, just for a limited number of people. Right? One of the anti-patterns I see is teams that do a sprint planning meeting and they try and story huddle every story with the entire team, and they're in a sprint planning meeting for 4 hours every week, every 2 weeks or whatever it is. And imagine those meetings where most of those people are sitting there going, this is not even anything I'm going to work on, and so there's a lot of wasted energy there, and that's one of the other things that we're going on with this. Yeah, good. Like questions? Yeah.
How do you share the knowledge then? Like generally in a sprint planning meeting,
Yep.
the whole team who understands what's happening as a team. So
Yep.
because with Scrum,
Yep.
you have a goal and they work towards that goal and build up that goal.
Yep.
But if you have smaller teams working,
Mhm.
let's say one of the team is sick or don't able to do it,
Yep.
how do you transfer the knowledge of what has happened to the next crew member?
So there's still a sprint planning meeting, right? They're still going to get together and talk about, okay, guys, one of the things we talk about this is this in Scrum, they've talked about this idea of the Scrum commitment, and it's a big deal, and you better get it right, or else, say-do ratio. We don't care about that, right? We don't care about whether you commit to something. We want the team to rally around a mission, right? And when we talk about sort of decomposing Agile from the highest, strategic corporate objectives down into a backlog of projects or features or initiatives or whatever word you use, and then down into a series of epics. That feature to epic to story, the feature and epic, I would write a press release for a feature, right? The bullet points on the press release are those epics, right? And it would be great, our sort of normal target state is that we'd love a team to be delivering 1 to 2 epics every 1 to 2 sprints, right? So the conversation in sprint planning is more like, okay, guys, we're trying to deliver the customer checkout experience this sprint, right? Bullet point on the press release, right? At that point, the team knows what the mission is to enough detail, and you go to whatever detail you're comfortable with to get the team rally around that mission. But then just get on with it, right? Now, as I said, when the team has full visibility to the storyboard, they see what's coming up next, they know the priority list, they know that the story huddle is about to take place because it's next on the thing. They're all sitting together, right? So somebody says, hey, I'm going to do the story huddle for the next story. Anybody's willing to join, but I need Ian and Rachel and Edwin. We're going to sit down together. We're the flight crew. Everybody else is welcome to come and hear about it, right? You have to decide what the right level of detail is and the right level of team engagement, but I'm just saying minimum responsible. Does that help? Sort of?
I'm still considering scenarios you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you have this team working on a story.
Yep.
So you have 3 people who had lots of conversation. Just those 3 people had lots of conversation of what this is, and they started on all the acceptance criteria
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
And if one of the crew members is not there,
Yep.
that means someone else had to help. So I'm wondering they might have understood.
Well, if you've got a flight crew of 3 people and one person is out sick, the flight still has 2 people, right? So if you say, hey, look, you might make the argument that, well, this is the designer, this is the developer, and this is the tester. The tester is out sick. We need another tester to come and join. Yeah, you might do that, right? But you still have 2 people that are intimately aware of the story and the tasks, right? And they might just get some expertise. And yeah, you'll have to bring them up to speed. Or if you move towards an actual model where you have a truly T-shaped model, if you're familiar with this idea of T-shaped people, where they can kind of play in different spaces and cross-train and that kind of stuff, you're approaching a world where that doesn't matter, because then you're heading towards things like pair programming. The developer and tester are kind of interchangeable. So I'm always careful how I say that, but they can certainly play in each other's spaces, and it becomes less of an issue over time. But yeah, there's definitely potential impact there. Yeah.
How do you build trust within the team and also externally? Like maybe vendor to client? So
Vendor to client.
Maybe project team?
Well, with client, right, in terms of client, you're talking about customers of the stuff. Customers tend to be trusting you more when you deliver what you say, right? So here we're talking about predictable delivery, right? So if we are during a burn-up chart, so let's say at the beginning of the quarter, we say, hey, we're going to have these release trains. At the end of the quarter, we are going to be delivering these epics and features. And if we do it, that's building trust with your customers, right? And plus, if you deliver stuff that isn't crap, right, not full of defects, you're definitely building trust with the customers. So I may be oversimplifying what your challenge is, but that's the way I think of it, right? Those outcomes that I talked about in the beginning, right? Quality, time to market, predictability, are really driving in service to customer satisfaction, and that's the trust factor of the customer, right? And this is all kind of helping towards that. Now, the trust within the team, I maybe need to explore that with you a bit more, but this is kind of what this is sort of heading towards, right? We're trying to move people out of this mindset of this us versus them, me versus you. I'm a developer, you're a tester. I am done with my bit, now it's your problem, and away we go. And if there's a lot of finger pointing, right? It's like, hey, it's broken. No, it's not broken. It is broken. It's not broken. Right? I'm logging a defect. No, you're not. And this is sort of driving those anti-pattern behaviors. So this idea of the Agile flight crew and trying to get a team to shift its mindset to, it's not about me doing a task. It's about us, the flight crew, delivering value across the board. They start to have different conversations. They start to realize that it's not I language, right? We're not talking about it today, but we talk about this intent-based leadership and I versus we. We really want teams, when we listen to them talk and listen to them interact, We want to hear more we language. We are trying to get the story done. We are blocked. We need help. Not, I'm blocked. I'm stuck. I gave it to you. I send an email, right? That's a sort of a listening factor. So I don't know if that hits any of the marks for you, but we probably need to explore your your scenario a little bit more.
If you create a constructive conflict
Mhm.
in the team and identify your vulnerability, that's where the team members trust each other,
Yeah.
and then they pile up
Yeah.
and go in the right direction.
Yeah.
If there is no constructive conflict between them because they fear to, or they are competing each other,
Yeah.
that's one of the potential reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, a lot of this is, I'm giving you sort of one perspective, one agile perspective. But a lot of this is like human dynamics and how people interact. And, you know, there's a lot to that. I'm certainly not the person who's in charge of psychology for, for agile teams. So, you know, if you're really struggling with a team, for example, where there's a lot of like toxic problems there, personality problems, it doesn't matter what agile process you wave over that, that's not going to solve that, right? You're going to need, you know, maybe interventions with managers and you know, personality coaching and communication coaching. It's a deep hole of opportunities. So yeah, I don't know. I'm sure that helps.
There's an interesting model I've seen around team dynamics that sort of at the bottom it says artificial harmony, and a lot of people think agile teams, that's what they're after, is harmony, and they're actually not.
Yeah.
The next layer up is called productive dissent or constructive dissent,
Yeah.
and that's actually what we're after.
Yeah.
Right, we're after a little bit of tension between the team and challenging, and then it goes up into, you know, personal attacks, taking positions, and then outright warfare.
Yeah. Yeah. The most effective teams, to add on to that point, the most effective teams are the ones that are going to say, no, that's not going to work, and that's okay, right? They want that kind of conversation and that dynamic. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Okay. Good. Yeah.
That's a question. So you're talking about forming story huddles
Mm-hmm.
and flight crews and things. So say your guy Joey finishes what he's doing and he goes to the board, grabs the next story,
Mm-hmm.
and then that process just seems at random, like for forming the team. So he just goes and grabs Jill and James and goes, hey guys, you're in this story with me now. Like, how does that?
Well, so he may not, it depends on the dynamic of the team, but he may not say, hey, you're on my flight crew. He's going to say something like, all right, guys, I'm going to grab another story. You guys don't need my help. I need a tester for the next story. Anybody want to sign up, right? It's more of a, you know, they're asking for who wants to be on this flight crew, who's next available. And it's, you know, how that works and whether that works for your team or whether it needs to be a little bit more command and control. But what you want to avoid is a manager coming in and going, okay, at the beginning of the sprint, you're going to do this, 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 right? A lot of this is about, what's his name? Daniel Pink and science of motivation and motivation teams, and a lot of that is about autonomy, right? One of the things he talks about, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And we really are trying to reinforce this idea of autonomy. Let the teams decide how they're going to solve this problem and do it in such a way that it's not highly prescriptive. So I don't know if that helps.
Sort of, I'm just thinking that you know, other people, presumably they're still working on their own stories. So
Yep, yeah, it's possible.
how you drag people into something.
Yeah, so you're not dragging like that. That seems like, yeah, come here and drag them in. It's really, okay, look, you know, the team, us, we know that there's another unit of work here that's the next highest priority, right? I'm available. I'll be the pilot. That's no problem, right? I need a developer. I need a tester. I need a designer, right? That team is still operating in a we mode, right? So they should say, oh, yep, the right thing for me to do is to help my team. So I know I'm not available right now, but hey, in half an hour, why don't we do the story huddle? Then I'll probably be finished by this in the afternoon, and I could, you know, start the work on it.
Guys, we're going to have to wrap it up here. We've got a time limit on the venue, and we need to call time. But we're going to stop and have this and stuff. So feel free to
All right. Thanks, guys.